Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joel Amadon.
And I'm Ann Monroe.
Welcome to the Road to Better Teaching, where we share stories of professional growth from across the field of education. Dr. Monroe, how are you?
I'm good. It sounds like you got a southern accent there for a minute. Dr. Amadon, rubbing off on you a little bit.
Just came down from the holler, got my flannel on,
Yeah, I'm from the holler, East Tennessee.
That's right. What my Randy Travis song, what my love is deeper than the holler.
Holler,
right? Yeah.
Great song, actually.
Watch a little Justified and all that good stuff with Raylan Givens and Walton Goggins. That's good stuff. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're not here to talk about even my very special sabbatical, but I think, you might insert a joke here every now and then.
I'm sure I'll find a spot.
I am freshly shaved.
Tease you on your very special sabbatical and your fresh look. You've had so much time to refresh yourself. On your very special sabbatical.
That's right. But today, and we are excited to welcome Emily Rose, and I would like her.
Emily Rose Reese.
Emily Rose Reese.
Emily Rose has been married for a little while, and now she is Emily Reese.
Yes.
But she is Emily Rose to us. Mm-hmm. Because she went through our program as an undergrad as Emily Rose, but she is now Emily Reese.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's good. Progress, right? And so let's get to know you. Emily, can you give a little bit of introduction for the listeners out there?
Yes. So as Dr. Monroe said, I went through Ole Miss undergrad as a secondary English education major. And I was an METP scholar, and I'm from South Haven, Mississippi. And when I graduated, I went and taught English, mostly 10th grade state tested, and coached soccer at Hernando High School for 5 years. And I came back to Ole Miss now, and I am a grad student in the counseling program.
And Emily, tell the listeners a little bit about what you're doing here while you're completing, obviously, your degree in counseling. Tell them what you're doing.
Yes, so I came back as a recruiter for the School of Education, which has been so fun. So I am talking to incoming high school seniors, sometimes juniors, who are interested in teaching. We also go out to community colleges and really just talk to anyone who is interested in all of the majors that we offer here. We get to answer all of their questions, talk a little bit about our experience teaching, and help them find what's the best fit. And it's been great. It's very similar to what I was doing with my own students that I was teaching who were trying to decide, what do I want to do and where do I want to go? So it's really fit right in, and it's great to be able to talk to all the new educators coming through that are interested in it. So that's what I'm doing now.
It's been great to have you and have your counterpart, Brianna Hall, who we'll talk to on this podcast at a later date, and have you guys back in Guyton Hall and helping us with our efforts to recruit students. It's just been fantastic to have you, have someone, have folks with experience coming in and talking about the profession and also experience with our programs, which is nice.
Yes, it's been great. I've loved doing it.
Well, it's cool. It's here to the sprinkling of the counseling kind of inserted into your teaching experience, talking to students and even the coaching side of it too, as well. Cause it's not just about X's and O's, but dealing with all that comes with, young people growing up and then all the issues that they're dealing. And that's pretty neat to see that kind of trajectory going on there.
Yes.
Which is cool. So now, we have our script, and we've talked to, what was it? Kelsey Dodson, who was a counselor, became an educational leader. She was transitioning between different programs. We had her on the podcast not that long ago, and so and even our the last person on the podcast, I can't remember who that was, but Cassandra, and she was talking about she was moving from being a math teacher into the principal corps. And so, even to think you're taking all this sort of background as an educator, and so bringing all of that to these questions. So however you want to take them, that's where we're all, it's all the same road. It's just maybe a little different destinations for some folks. So we like to start with this countdown to set the scene. So naming 3 educators who shaped you as a person?
Yes. Okay. So the very first one, who was my favorite person ever, and she was why I wanted to be a teacher, was Miss Pasterchick. She taught AP Lit and Lang, depending on which semester you took, and she had matching coffee cups that went with every single unit that we
That is
ever
awesome.
read in her class.
Perfect.
Yes, it was amazing. And she just was very passionate about it. She was a great teacher. We all loved her. And obviously, I went into English education, so English was my favorite subject. And I just had so much fun. And I just was looked at her and I was like, I want to be Miss Pastor Chick when I get older. So that was the beginning of my start. And so that was like junior and senior year. She was like my biggest, this is who I want to be. And
Did she
then
have a daughter named Olivia?
she did have a daughter. I do remember
I
her
think,
talking about her daughter.
yeah, I think Miss Pastor Chick served as a clinical instructor for us, where we had student teachers placed in her room for years. And her daughter Olivia went through our program as well.
Yes, that I know she had a student teacher, and I'm sure like that sounds right.
Yeah.
Do you have
Yeah.
an
Yes.
example of a coffee cup, just for a chance? Because
Uh,
also I know that Dr. Monroe is taking a note. She's like, "Ooh, matching coffee cups." Going,
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
going straight
So
to Etsy.
yes, she had all of them. The one I remember the most is the Frankenstein one, but
Nice.
every book that we read, she had a coffee cup for it, like in some form or fashion. And she was a tea drinker. So she had her tea every class and her coffee cup matching our unit. So like if we were switching units, we would know what we were going to because it was on her coffee cup. So it was
That's
great.
awesome.
That
I
is
love that
beautiful.
because it's fun for her, fun for you, but it demonstrates a passion for what she's doing in that little subtle way that is awesome and that obviously had an impact on you as a student.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And then so that was my before teaching, like kind of getting into it, who like inspired me to go into it. And then when I was into it, my very first year, my mentor teacher was Logan Clark. I'm sure y'all probably have some form of him. He went through principal corps, I believe. He was also secondary English education, and he coached the men's soccer team. Um, he was really good at helping me, or what he helped me the most with was structuring my lesson plans, and understanding data informed instruction when I shifted into 10th grade English because became it's always a big part of it, but becomes a really big part of what you're doing when you are doing state tested, especially with 10th grade, because in Mississippi, they have to pass that test if they want to graduate. There are like a few test out options, but they don't really come. They hold them back as a last resort. So he was very, very helpful with data, and data was overwhelming in the beginning when I was in state tested, and I felt so confident with it after spending like a year under him learning what he was doing. And my the other like the kind of counterpart to that was also my first year teaching. So kind of my other mentor teacher who was not like my assigned mentor teacher was Miss Jones, and she was very fun, very engaging. She focused on like picking content that her kids liked and social emotional learning and basing those in. And she would literally let me come into her classroom in fourth block every day and teach my lesson, like pre-teach my lesson for the next day. And she did that for me for probably like 3 months, and just gave me a lot of support through, making sure things were fun and how could I, involve engaging content. How can I teach kids like social emotional learning? And especially with English, it's really easy to weave all those things in. So I was very lucky to get kind of both sides of the spectrum of ways to teach in your classroom. And I was able to blend all of those things that first year. So I had a lot of great support there.
That's awesome. Love
Yeah.
that. And
Oh
I
my.
like this idea of which we see this a lot too, but the assigned mentor is helpful, but then you also find someone that's someone you seek out.
Yes.
that gives you mentorship and maybe some other areas that the assigned mentorship doesn't,
Yes, exactly.
which is great. And
Mhm.
I had some of that myself my first year. I had great mentor teachers, and that just were a tremendous help for me. I just was
Yeah.
very, very lucky.
Yes, me
Yeah.
too. I was too. If I needed a safe space to go to like just express any like worries or feelings, I would go to Miss Jones. And then if I needed any help with structuring and understanding data, I was able to go to Mr. Clark. So it was really nice to have both of those options there.
I think that's pretty important with regards to like mentorship and trying to find the people that you look to for certain things. Like, I mean, jokingly before this podcast, we were talking about, you know, some technical issues and like talking about a former person on the road to better teaching, Dr. Sweeney, like help is very helpful for some of those technical issues versus like if like, and I think about even for me personally, if I'm looking for, hey, how do I handle a situation? Like, how do I talk to certain people? I'm coming to Dr. Monroe, be like, hey, I got this issue. How do I deal with it? Because I've got so many things and emotions and like, you know, what's the structure? And she'd be like, do this, then do this, then do that. And like, oh, having those different people for different things in order to help you. And especially as a new teacher where you're like, hey, I need a safe place to try some things. I need to figure out how to, I'm getting, you know, overwhelmed with data. How do I use this stuff? Or even just like, hey, I'm having a moment and I need somebody to talk to. You know,
Yeah.
those are so important, and it's not just the person that you're assigned to. It's like you have to get out there to try to find like, hey, who are your people that you can go
Yeah.
to?
I think it
Yeah.
also shows the awesome thing about teaching, which is that not every teacher is the same, and that there can be very different types of teachers, very different teaching methodology, and but yet there be an effective teacher in every type of teacher. You know, we're
Yeah.
all trying to work toward the same thing, but we don't always all do it the same way.
Yeah, yeah. I would say I don't think I met any teacher that taught the same way. I mean, we're all teaching the same content, but everybody has a different way to deliver and things like that. So yeah, 100%.
So, what led you to become an educator? So, two reasons or events that kind of led you down this path.
Yes. So I think the first thing is just kind of loving school in general and enjoying teaching. But what I can remember back to, it was when I was in second grade. I was paired with someone who was struggling with reading. And in my second grade brain, I thought that I taught this kid how to read. Like I was like, I taught me how to read, and I'm a teacher now. and, and that was kind of just like my beginning, I think, of just one, I enjoyed it so much. I loved reading when I was in second grade. It was my favorite thing to do. And I'm sure that's why I was paired with him, just because I loved doing it and it was great. I thought it was the best thing in the world. And we would sit and read together every day. And I remember getting to like be on the mat and he would pick out a book and we would read it together. And it was so much fun. And I do remember, and this could be, me adjusting my memories a little bit, but, or like, uh, he like told me one day, I think that he really enjoyed it and that I really helped him. And I think that just really stuck with me all the way through. And that was just kind of my beginning of, I really like to do this. And then I think my second actual main event, like really the thing that got me through the door into education, was actually Blake Adams, who came to our school. So everybody, and I think it was Miss Pasterchick's class that we were pulled out of. He came and talked to us about METP and education at Ole Miss and what that looks like. And that would have been back like 2013 maybe. So recruitment to universities wasn't really as big of a thing as it is in high schools now. So now, through my years teaching, there's, that we'll have college fairs and there'll be career fairs and you know all the options that are out there to you. And that was really the first time we had someone come to our school and talk to us about what an education program looked like. And Blake is very animated and excited and makes everything seem like the most fun thing in the world. And so, me and a few other people from that school applied to that program, and some of us got in together and went down to Ole Miss together. And so, I already kind of had a group and a support system, and a great scholarship that got me into where I was. So I think that that's definitely what got me through the actual door, like over the barrier into the program, was Blake.
Great. That's awesome. We will
Yeah.
make sure he gets to listen to the podcast. I know he's a regular listener.
Yes.
Well, and I'm just thinking, like, just as a side note to Ann, we got to get Blake on
We
on
got to get him
some
on the
podcast.
podcast.
Just have him tell us like stories with Blake, and just hit record
Yes.
and let him go. But I could see him like, imagine him talking to a room in a space and getting people excited. Like you can imagine, like he's an infectious personality, and so
Yes.
that's great that's one of your events. That's pretty cool.
Also,
Yes.
Emily, what's neat about that is the work that you're doing recruiting with Brianna. It's, you saw that made an impact on you and it was
Mhm.
part of your journey. And so I bet it's interesting knowing that you're out there, that you could be part of somebody else's journey to this career as a professional educator. That must be really neat.
Yes, it's fun. I love it. I hope someone comes back and it's like, well, I have had a few students that I've ran to, a few of my students that I've ran into that have started teaching, and at least one of them was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be an English teacher now." And I was like, "Because I loved your class so much." So it is crazy to see that happen, especially when like some of my students because I talk to a lot of my kids about, what do you want to do? What are your plans after college, who come back and originally didn't want to teach and then all of a sudden are teaching, like
Yeah.
have switched into it. It's really cool to see. So hopefully that's widens my reach just outside of my classroom doing the recruiting through this
Oh,
program. So
absolutely. That's impact and legacy, right? In like even just to think like at a minimum, you inspired someone to want to go pursue the field. And like if we can, get as many teachers as possible that show like, hey, this is something worthwhile. Like, I mean, thinking about all the different avenues that you can take, and like this is one where, man, you're really making a difference. You're interacting with people that are on the verge to the rest of their lives and getting a chance to influence them. Like that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
yeah,
So good on you,
yeah,
Emily.
yeah.
Oh, keep going.
Oh, I was gonna say that that's something that I've really enjoyed about teaching high schoolers is that I do get to kind of know what they're gonna do with their lives. Like it's a fun part of teaching high school. I think a lot of people are scared to be 22 and go into teaching high school, and I think that that's just one of the really unique portions of teaching high school that you get to see like all your students literally grow up like right before your eyes. It's a very cool thing to be a part of. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's neat. All right, so 1 mile marker on your journey of growing as an educator. So, and we like to think of it maybe as a like we're on the road and we got that green sign that you see in Mississippi that's a historical marker, like that marks some moment in history that happened in a certain place. So, what would be the moment that you would pick to represent this moment on your path of growth as an educator?
okay. So this was probably, I would say, my third year of teaching was when this happened. And I started shifting into, so I had taught what our school calls just like traditional state tested. And then there was like there was a degree change in how they were doing traditional high school diplomas. So you would have your traditional diploma, you'd have your alternate route diploma, which was like self-contained sped. And then there was a middle ground diploma, which was kind of for students who did not need to be self-contained, but probably could not get their traditional diploma, and they got rid of that year. So they split. So they kind of created what we called like it's essentially SREB, 10th grade state test, but it's year-long English for
What's
students.
SREB? Just
Can't even remember what SREB stands for, but it's I wish I could tell you. I could Google it for
we'll
you
look
really
it up.
quickly. Okay, yeah, we'll look it up. But it's kind of just like it's a prep course. And so the class that I taught was not SRAB, but it was modeled off of SRAB, and I did have to get SRAB trained to teach the class, but I was able to change the content, and it was to help push those students who were now having to get the traditional diploma in order to be able to get there and then state tested. So that was for teachers who taught, it kind of was focusing on the state test. So biology, algebra one, English, and then US history. So all of those classes, these were created for all of those subjects. And so I kind of had to change the way that I mean, I did have to change the way that I taught. And the first thing that I did with it was teach it how I had taught my other classes, my traditional 10th grade state test classes. And of course, it didn't work because I needed to change my teaching. And I went to my teacher bestie, which was Victoria Moore, who is now the curriculum person at DeSoto County Schools. And I was like, this is not working. I don't know what to do. And she was like, well, what do you think your students need? She was like, you're in that classroom. Like, what do they need? Like, you don't have to follow this pacing plan. You don't have to follow these standards. Like, what do they need? And I was like, well, they really are not reading, and we're really not able to write. Like, we're not able to understand just the text that we put in front of us, and we can't put a sentence together. Really, I mean, overall, like, yes, we probably could, but we really had to go back and do those things. And she was like, well, go back and teach that. So then I like restructured everything. So we went back to like, we learned nouns and verbs. We learned compound complex sentences. We took our text, I threw the standards away, and we just focused on chunking a text, breaking it down, figuring out how to identify words that we don't know, putting our thoughts down on paper, so like annotations, to understand just what we're reading. And I think someone telling me that it's okay not to follow the pacing guide, it's okay not to follow the standards, like it's okay to meet your students where they're at, even if they are very, at times, very behind on grade level, and they come in with data that tells you they're very behind on grade level, but it's kind of scary to say, I'm not going to teach, these things right now. Like, we have to start back in eighth grade. Like, we have to go back and do eighth grade skills that we missed. And when you're expected to get them all the way to passing a state test, it can be scary to do that. But that is what changed my teaching. So like the very first time that I did that, and that conversation with her, I would say, like, was my mile marker. Like, that was my sign. Like, you need to teach your students what they need to know more than you need to go through standards and things like that. But once I started doing that, like, my kids' confidence and their ability to like understand and do the standards just exponentially grew. So it was like, I didn't even have to worry about teaching them the standards, because once they could read and comprehend the text, and like we could have a good handle on writing, then we were able to get what the standards were asking us to do more quickly and better than when I was trying to just skip that part. So that was the biggest thing for me for how to grow, was to just decide I have to do what my kids need more than anything else.
Let me ask you this: with a lot of the pressures on teachers with timing and sticking to what a lot of districts give out as pacing guides and things like that, what advice would you give a new teacher who's struggling with this idea of, I know what my students need from me right now, but the administration's telling me this, or I'm supposed to be doing this because everyone else is doing this, but my kids aren't ready for that? What is the best advice for a new teacher that doesn't know what to do with that? Because I think that's a big struggle.
Yeah. So for me, what I did, and I think that is 100% a huge struggle, and especially just having to go and say, I feel like my kids need something different. So one, having that support was great for me to have someone who was my teacher bestie, who was on the curriculum side. I would definitely say you could email your curriculum person and have a contact, just to have that outside person before you maybe go to your admin who can back you on, this is what your kids need. And then second, it was really easy for 10th grade to have the data to prove that it was working. So like I could go in and say, this is what I've done and these are what, this is where my students are growing from this, even though it's not necessarily what I'm being told to do right now. And so having actual evidence that what you're doing is working, I think is a good way to do it, and collecting your own. And it doesn't even have to just be through like state tested scores. It could just be through this was my assignment that I gave them beforehand, and this was my assignment that I gave them after, and look at this growth. So just having, I think, things that back up what you're doing and then some outside support. And then if you take that forward to your admin, I think that most people that you had would respect that and would say, hey, what you're doing is working, so you got it and you can go with it. And yeah, that worked for me. I think that may change like district to district, but I think that's one way you could maybe approach that situation.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, kind of backed by data, and then with every school is going to have somebody, either, even if they're not just assigned to their school, but assigned to maybe the district or multiple schools in the district, have a curriculum person they can reach out to. So that's great advice.
Well, having the support of your bestie, the agency to say I'm going to do it, and then the efficacy saying like, yeah, I'm doing this and it's working, and then the counterintuitive nature of it where you're like, I actually made probably more progress because I went backwards, right? Like
Oh,
it's like
I don't think I would have made progress had I not gone backwards. Like, I think it would not have gotten to where it got. So I think I definitely had to go backwards in that situation.
and everybody would have been miserable, right?
Hmm.
Hey,
Hmm.
I'm not, I don't think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And the kids are like, well, I don't even know what we're talking about because I have some gaps in my thing. And to say like, no, let's go backwards a little bit. Let's, refine what we have. And then and then getting, like you said, the confidence and like putting things together. And now lifelong skills that they're going to have of the writing and the reading and being able to process, comprehend, and be able to express themselves. Like that's what schools are, not just to like follow, hey, on today you need to be at this page, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
It's a great moment.
Yes, yeah, and it was for my students as well, and for me as a teacher, to do that. But yeah, they definitely, I think if I don't know if they could tell you what standards that they learned in that class, but I know every student that I had like grew in reading confidence and at least had a better understanding of grammar. I would not say a full understanding, but a better understanding of grammar when they left is, I think, what they could say.
Yeah. So if you had a souvenir for this moment, what would you point to? Like something to represent this moment. What would you point to?
Yeah. So I think for me, my way that I kind of incorporated this every single day, and this is going to sound really basic, but it did incorporate all the things, was I started using what I called annotations, which is exactly what you think it is. Like it's writing notes on your paper. But I was able to use that one tactic to kind of start my kids where they needed to. So I would, everything was printed. I printed all of my passages. Everything that we had to read was printed
Analog.
on paper.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they had to write. And I had them, like, before I kind of like started all this, we did a little bit of buy-in, like a little research article that proves how much actually writing versus electric version helps you process ideas and retain information and things like that. So that was kind of my buy-in. And then every single
You shared
time,
with them the article, the research article?
yes, yes,
Awesome. Okay,
it
keep
was
going. Yes,
a
beautiful.
yeah, it was a very basic version of the stuff, but it had the data backed whatever, and they were pretty into it. They were like, okay, this is cool. And so everything that we did, and what I just started with was we would literally read a paragraph and they would have to write on their paper. And this is what I called annotations, something they thought about the paragraph. So they just had to, I think a lot of times what was happening with my students is one, they had low vocabulary, that which affects reading comprehension, and two, they weren't really stopping and processing what they were thinking, what they were reading. And so they would just read without stopping or thinking about anything that they're doing, they would read the whole text and they would say, I've read it. But they haven't actually read it because they're not taking time to process or understand it. And so we talked a lot about that, and I walked them through that process. And so we started really basically with annotations, and I would walk around to every single student, and every single time that we stopped, I would go and see what their thoughts were on their papers. So they had to participate in the process. They didn't have a choice. And I even would just do grades. Like I would adjust my grades. They would get credit for just writing something down on their paper, like just attempting to think it. And then I gradually scaffolded from there. And like, I mean, you can wind every English standard into an annotation, honestly, and call it an annotation. And just kind of built from there and taught them really the reading process through that. So I would say what I called annotations was my souvenir.
Nice, nice. I mean, I like that the fact that you're interrupting. I can understand what you're saying. Like, hey, I've read this page versus like, there's lots of stuff I've read where I'm like word, through the whole page
Yes.
and like actually
Yeah.
like haven't put meaning in it. I understand, but like you're saying, hey, read a chunk and then write something down and like anything. And so that probably gives some freedom. And like I think, and Dr. Monroe would talk about shame. Like, hey, we're all writing something down. It's not like it's on some board that everyone's going to see. So we're all doing it. We're all participating, even if it's not the most insightful thing that ever to write down. I did write down something that's then allowing me to somehow make meaning of what I just read.
Yes, yes, 100%. And it was just to like encourage a student to actually think about what they're reading and try to comprehend what they're reading in little sections before we try to move on and understand it as a whole.
And can you say more? I mean, like I think just from the shame perspective, with folks that are struggling with either reading or writing, like why annotations? It seems like was something that's productive in these efforts.
Well, I think it has everyone doing something. So everyone's taking an action. And I think a lot of times with kids who are struggling, they feel like they don't even know where to start, right? And so this gives like sort of it's very open, this thing you described, Emily, where they can do something, they can get something down. And so
Yes,
it has them start where they are, basically. And
yes,
everybody's in a different place. So they're able to kind of, put down where they are, which helps you as a teacher
hmm,
find that out, but also it lets them participate. I know a lot of times kids, and Joel and I have, and Joel particularly, have looked at how shame impacts the mathematics classroom. And a lot of times kids are like frozen. They don't even know how to approach something.
hmm,
They don't know, if they don't know how to solve, if you're doing something in a very traditional way and you're asking them to solve an equation, they don't know where to start. They've got nothing. So it's even worse for them because it's like zero. They feel like they have nothing. But
yeah,
this approach gives them a place to start. And so
yes,
they're involved in the conversation. They're part of the conversation. They're adding a piece. It's a piece that they're comfortable with adding. We're starting with. So I think to me, that's how what you're describing helps eliminate some of that shame factor in learning when kids are struggling.
yes, yeah. I think I didn't really realize that's kind of what was going on until you talk about those things, but shame was definitely a huge part of what was going on in my classroom with my students, and a lot of them had very low reading confidence, and like they were in a class that they knew they were in because they're high school and it's tracked and they're aware and they know that they're like at risk of possibly not passing the state test. And so
Right.
they definitely came into that class feeling like that. And another thing that I did notice with them, similar to what you said in the math class, is that they'll try to just kind of like not participate. Like they'll try to just kind of hide and not participate. And so they never have to fail. So like that fear of failure was really there. And like really that kind of winds me into something else that doesn't go with the souvenir. But a big thing I opened my class with every single year was grit, to kind of help offload the shame of coming into that classroom, that it doesn't matter if it just comes to you like a snap. Like if you work hard enough, like the students who are most successful are the ones who can consistently work hard over time. And just because you have to work harder doesn't invalidate your journey as a student if you maybe have to do, it takes you a little longer to understand something than maybe someone else does. And
Yeah.
so that was definitely very tied into how I structured that classroom and what I did with them. And really, especially something else I did with them too was that 10th grade state tested, it's very big on if you don't pass the class, like you can't graduate high school and all that stuff. And it's this huge deal. And it's a really hard test. I mean, like most kids struggle with the test. And I would just tell them, like, at the end of the day, it does not matter if you don't pass this test this year. Like, we just want to grow. We want to get a little bit better. We want to get more comfortable. And I would tell my students, but, anybody who maybe was really worried about it, we would have conversations, one-on-one conversations throughout the whole year, kind of talking about progress and where they're at. I would tell them, like, you can always do this again next year. I literally had break, like during break, I would tutor students who hadn't made it, who I had taught in the past, and help read it. Like, there's 1,000 ways to get there, and I would make sure that they knew those things, and that passing the test really wasn't the end all be all of this class. It's really just to be as prepared as possible to get there, and that any growth is good. Like, we are happy with coming out of this class any better than we were coming into that class is like great. So I just wanted to really emphasize that growing was more important than meeting a mark. And some marks, like some of those kids just weren't prepared to meet in a year. The gap was too big. I mean, and that just was the truth for some of those students. But as long as they went into the next year knowing I'm better than I was coming in, then we were happy. So
That's
That's
beautiful.
great.
So, and it sounds like you kind of addressed this question. I'm going to ask it anyway, though, in case you had something else you wanted to add to it. Why was this moment important for you and your growth as an educator?
yeah, so I think I was able to kind of finally see for myself and realize that meeting pacing guides and meeting standard data and having the best scores on state tested, like, doesn't determine your worth as a teacher. Like
Mm,
when you can, and I think it's hard. I think when you move into a state tested, that just kind of comes with it. Like no matter how much or little emphasis your school puts on test scores, I think it's just hard to, um, you know, deal with that weight because I mean that's how schools in Mississippi are rated. That's how schools get funding. And if you're teaching all the bottom 25 students, then you're a huge part of your school's rating. And I was able to just kind of be like, it actually, my students being more confident and getting what they need and seeing them grow and how much that meant to them and how much that changed them more than anything else helped me realize that two things can exist at once. Like you
mm,
can make both things work because through teaching them, how to read, how to write, this my test scores were better. And like I didn't even necessarily emphasize them as much as I had. I mean, I did later on in the school year, but I would technically lose time and they were still succeeding. So that was, I think, the biggest part for me.
Yeah, what you said too, I think is important is that your kids care that your kids were invested in their growth.
Yes.
And that a lot of times people will assume that a kid who's not excelling or is maybe in that class where they're the part of the lowest performing 25 that they don't care. That's not true.
Yes, it's
They
not true
do
at
care.
all.
They do
Yeah.
care, and it's they're struggling, and so I think
Yeah.
sometimes we confuse their frustration and sometimes their lack of engagement is not caring about
Oh
their
my
learning, and
goodness.
that is
Yeah.
absolutely not true.
Yes, that I think is the biggest thing that I learned is that my kids who are most frustrated and most checked out, it was because they felt like they couldn't do it, not because they didn't care about it. And I maybe had two students the entire time who truly did not care. And that was because what was going on in their outside lives was just bigger than school. And I never had a student that walked in that was in my classroom that just genuinely did not care about school because they didn't want to succeed. It was because it was hard and they didn't have the tools that they needed. So,
Yeah, they have to cope in some way, and so sometimes that withdrawing or is something that they do because they're so frustrated, and it's been by the time you get them in high school, years and years of frustration, a lot
yes,
of times.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe it's the wanting someone to care about where they are at, you know, like, and seeing like, oh, this teacher cares about me and my progress. Oh, I'm on. You know, like, let's do this, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that's a big thing as well.
Yeah.
You gave a huge challenge now, Emily, because we're thinking about why do you think this moment or mile marker of your growth matters to the wider field of education? We're connecting it to standards. I don't know. And I was just looking at the standards. Like, there's so many that
So
this
many.
moment. I don't
And
know.
I think the standards 1 and 2 pop out with this, Emily's description about,
About the learner and learning, learner
yeah, but
development,
it's
learning
standard 1 is
differences.
learner development, standard 2 is learning differences, is meeting the students where they are. That's what, to me, that's what I'm hearing is that you have to meet the students where they are in order for your students to be successful in learning. And
I don't
that's the
think
whole
that that's
point.
what she would have picked, though.
What do you think?
I'm guessing. Don't say anything, Emily. Don't give it away. I would think more about the instructional strategy, given that this annotation was an instructional strategy.
Yeah, that's true. You
But
could look at it that way. I guess it depends on, are you looking at it as a broad
yeah,
thing or specific, but it's definitely reflective of a lot of those in-task standards that we want to make sure that our developing teachers are working
all
toward
right.
meeting.
Let's find out what the answer is. Emily, what did you pick? You seriously, you could have picked any of these standards, any of the
Yes.
10 in task standards.
Yes.
So which one did you pick, or which couple
Okay.
did you pick?
So I'm not gonna lie, I forgot to do that. I am so sorry. I did not have it ready. I think I missed that question when I was walking through. But it sounds like I
I might
think
not have attached the standards.
I
So
think you didn't. I'll be honest with you. I don't think you attached the standards because I, for a half second, thought about it, but I wasn't sure if you didn't do that on purpose because we might talk about the counseling thing. So I didn't say anything. It's
what?
partly my fault.
okay. But
What?
I think
Yeah,
yeah,
go for
sorry.
it. Go. No, keep going.
So I think both of those are in there. I think if I was going to think about it as like a tangible thing, I probably would have gone with the instructional strategy just because it's easy to have like that concrete example. I think
He
that's what
thinks
and
he
I
just won. He thinks he just won
Yeah, it's
something.
okay. I did.
He's
Yeah,
fist pumping and thinking he just won something. Go ahead.
everyone knows. The
and
listeners
I
know.
Celebrate
think
yourself, Dr.
Yeah,
Avedon.
yeah.
Celebrate
I'm so
yourself.
good.
yes, but I think I 100% like my big moment was meeting the student where they're at and I mean I spent so much time learning how to differentiate. It just would have been hard to find like something concrete to put in those things, but that was definitely the biggest part of my journey that third year was meeting the students where they're at and differentiation because I mean it was completely different. I've changed everything. Like I actually the next year rewrote the curriculum for that specific class because to meet the student where I knew my students were going to be the next time that they came. So
Well, and so that goes into, I mean, then thinking about like professional responsibility, professional learning, and ethical practice. It would not have been ethical if you're taking responsibility for where your students are at and what they can do to say, no, charging ahead, pacing guide, and everyone's
yes,
like, no,
yeah,
that's not right. And then also the leadership and collaboration, like the things that you did. You just said you rewrote curriculum based off of what you know about your students, and then also the collaboration that you did in talking to your teaching bestie about how am I supposed to
yeah,
how am I going to do that? Like that's
yeah.
this is such a great mile marker. This is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And it was nice to, once I made that change, to be able to, like, I mean, it just flowed so much better every year after that, when students came through. And, like, also they kind of knew, like, that, like, I guess, I don't know how it, I guess they knew what to expect when to come into my room and, like, what it would be like to be in that class. And I definitely, like, sought out, give me students with IEPs, give me students with 504s. Like, I want them here. Like, that's what I love to do. And so anytime a teacher was like, hey, I think this student might be great in your class, of like, send them on.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
yeah.
What's your current pocket size philosophy?
Yeah, so this stayed with me all the way through. It's been the same.
Sweet.
It hasn't changed. And it also has led me into my journey where I am now with this. But so my philosophy always going in was love and then teach. So that was like my really shortened version. And I think that ties in with how I changed my teaching. And I think that also ties in with why I'm switching into counseling now. Because everything that I talked about today was my curriculum side of that journey, but I didn't include any of the insane parts of teaching high schoolers and being a part of high schoolers' lives and all the needs that they have outside of the classroom. And then when our school had a therapist added through funding through like a needs assessment, that's when I was like, okay, this is where I want my next journey to be in to help love and then teach my students. So.
So that pocket-sized philosophy that Emily just stated, love and then teach, inspired. I had her share that with my class last semester when we were working on pocket-sized philosophies, and I was it was a challenge. It was a challenge to shorten, think about shortening my pocket-sized philosophy, and so I did. So I will say Emily inspired me to really think about my pocket-sized philosophy, and I was able to shorten it where it's now something that I remember and I don't have to look up on my phone anymore. So I went from sort of a long sentence to 3 words.
Okay.
And so I was really excited. I will just say Emily inspired it. My new pocket-sized philosophy, which is belonging
Yay.
fuels possibility.
Nice.
Belonging fuels possibility. So I loved the love and then teach. So that inspired me, Emily, when you did that in class last semester.
I love it. And yours is so good now. Belonging fuels possibility.
Possibility.
That is so cool.
Love it. So, I mean, and you can see like how you're carrying that with you into your next journey. And then, what would you, what would you say to folks, I mean, that are, in the classroom and identifying like, I think because I think there is something just a little bit rare about the agency that you felt, right? And the ability to do what you did. And like, having that being springing up from a love for your students. And I don't know, like what suggestions would you have for folks out there who maybe don't feel that? Like, how would they maybe access some of that agency? Because you do have some. I mean, there is the tool of
Yes.
the door of your
Yes.
classroom that,
Yes.
is there. But I don't know, how would you help people tap into their own agency?
Um, that is a really good question. It was hard when I did that because I was scared. It's scary to kind of leave what you're expected to do to kind of pursue something else, even though it really is all the same. Um, but I think it's just like you know what your students need best. You are the one that's in your classroom every day. And I think a lot of people, I think I was so scared to do that. I don't think I needed to be as scared as I was. I think if you know that your students are going to succeed more, then you should try it. And I think that even if you change it and it doesn't work, like mine stemmed from what I was doing was not working, you should pursue it anyways. And you should just continue to kind of take some agency and do what you feel like your students need and just make sure that what you're doing is working. So having some sort of something behind that to prove like, hey, this is helping my students, in some form or fashion. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, just doing it. You just got to do it.
Yeah. Well, even too having like, hey, here's an assignment where we're completing sentences, and here's before, and here's something after, and like, hey, more sentences.
Yes.
Like, hey, we
Yes.
got it. Like, or look at the meaning they're making out of this reading passage, and so that's good. All right, so we'd like to end with a little bit of resource suggestions and resource dump. I've got one that I thought of, especially given you. I mean, one this thing of annotations. Like, did you come up with this, or is this something that you found somewhere?
So it's kind of just, I think maybe a lot of English teachers who are teaching secondary are going to have some form of knowledge of annotations. It's not like, it's not necessarily in the standards, but it's just like kind of like I think a typical teaching practice, kind of.
Yeah.
And I really just adapted it a little bit for that and kind of turned it into an instructional strategy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so because you can scaffold and adjust them. Like, I mean, then I could take those beginning annotations of just starting with writing down what you think and saying, okay, what's the main idea of this section?
Yeah.
Okay, how does this section connect to paragraph 3? How does, all those things. So that was just something like you can take other people's instructional strategies and like adapt them and name them and like do whatever works best for you, I think, with that.
Well, that brought me to one. There's a math one called Instructional Strategy from this practice-based PD crew. And they have these like small little nudges that they call them. And one of them is called super wrong, kind of right. So from a math perspective, like, hey, no matter what, I want you to get this wrong, like this thing wrong, but you can be kind of wrong or you can be really wrong. And so, and you have to like say, hey, is this super wrong or is it kind of right? Even though it's still wrong. So like even to say like for a kid, hey, I don't know what to write here. All right, we're going to play super wrong, kind of right. Make it really wrong. And then how do you know it's really wrong? So they're still making meaning of it. But in order to say enough to say, hey, it's close, but I know it's not there. Or it's, oh, this is super wrong because I'm talking about dinosaurs or whatever. And this is supposed to be about, like Wuthering Heights or I don't know, like something like that. And like that's those kind of strategies that you can insert on top of your thing called annotations, I think is kind of neat.
Yes, that sounds awesome.
And do you have anything?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to something that we touched on at the very beginning of the podcast, which is this idea that teachers can be different, but still be effective. We can have so many different ways to do something, but then be very effective. And it's reminded me of, there's a Todd Whitaker book, What Great Teachers Do Differently. And it's in its third edition now, but there's so many ways to go about doing something, but there are great, practices that really effective teachers have, or qualities that really effective teachers have, regardless of how you approach your strategies or your instruction in a day. It might be very different from somebody else, but there are certain qualities that just make effective teachers. So it's a very practical book, and it's just got those things that really work, no matter how you go about doing something.
Yeah, and I think that adds just this whole picture of, hey, let's try some things and let's try to look at things at what works for our kids. So a huge thank you to Emily Reese for sharing a mile marker on the road to better teaching.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. And remember, the road to better teaching goes on forever, and the joy of learning never ends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Rate and review the podcast. It really helps others find these stories. And please share it with a colleague or friend who's on their own journey in education.
You can find today's show notes and all the links we mentioned at roadtobetterteaching.com. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to each of you traveling this journey of becoming and growing as an educator. The world is a better place because you are sharing the gifts you've been giving to teach others.
And the Road to Better Teaching is supported by Amadon Planet.